Today I'm talking about a little bit about translation, the very basics of translation, which start with linguistics basically, and the equivalence, which was very well known in the 60s. I know it's an old theory about which now they're moved into culture theory, and after that the culture turn, and then now ideological turn, all these theories. But let me just go for the basic ones now, for you to be aware of. So what do we translate when we translate? What do you translate really, usually? Well, what do you translate? Do you translate just grammar, words, styles, sounds, or something else? Of course, you translate meaning, on top of which you translate all the other parts that come with the meaning. And how do you translate them? Of course, you use methods of translation, and you look at the process of translation, what it is. Now, what is meaning? Meaning is a complicated network of language components which comprises syntax and grammar, vocabulary and words, style, phonology and sounds. And of course, if we look at it in this, we find that language consists of grammar, words, style, and sounds, and all of them together give you the meaning, and that meaning is then translated into another language, and that's how you look at translation and meaning and translation. In language, of course, if we look at them, in grammar we will look at so many things like sentences, clauses, word order, tenses, modals like can, will, shall, questions, negation, not, imperatives, al-amr, adjectives, adverbs, articles like the, an, a, and sentence connectors like conjunctions and so on. In vocabulary, in words, you choose synonymy, which is equivalent to another word, like the word desk and table, and then polysemy, more than one meaning, many meanings to the same word, antonymy, which is the opposite of a word, connotations, which is the implied meaning, collocations, which is words that come together, idioms, proverbs, metaphors, technical terms like Arabization, as in computer, computerat, it becomes because you've actually applied the Arabic grammar to it, mufawtar, fatura, and then you've got proper nouns, also how you translate Tony to Tony, and Marx to Marcos, and so on, Jonah, Eunice. And then you've got institutional terms which are used that are in the UN well known, the WHO, منظمة الصحة العالمية, and so on. There is culture as well on top. In style, you look at formal, informal, fronting, parallelism, ambiguity, repetition, redundancy, short and long sentences, irony, punctuations, and nominalization, and as opposed to verbalization of a sentence. And then you've got phonology, which is relating mostly to translating poetry, rhyme and rhythm and alliteration and consonance and assonance, meter and foot and chiming and stress, pitch and tone. So these are really the basics that you do. But how do we translate? Well, we translate using certain methods and tools. The methods, I can cover them in another time. Vinay and Darbilnet used some methods, and then also, or strategies, also the direct translation as opposed to oblique translation, which are strategies, and under which there are also procedures. The same applies to Newmark. He's got so many procedures and strategies used. As for the tools, you look at dictionaries. You use Hassan al-Karmi, for example, Arabic-English, English-Arabic dictionary, or medical dictionary and other dictionaries, encyclopedias like Britannica, Encyclopedia Britannica, a reference book, good ones, and softwares that are like for machine translation, or CAT, which is computer-assisted translation. And also you need to understand the process of translation. How is the mind of the interpreter or translator works? which is the thinking process of them. And of course, the methods. Well, I look at the methods very briefly now, just to give you an idea of what originally they are. They are basically based on literal translation as opposed to free translation as a strategy, or word for word as for meaning, and then form, which is the language or content, meaning and message. Letter of the text you focus on, or the spirit of the text you focus on, as in letter of the law and spirit of the law. Form as opposed to message. Direct meaning as opposed to implied meaning. In context, you choose the words instead of out of context when you choose the word when you're translating, because some students actually choose words that are in the dictionary, they cut and paste them without looking at the context in which they are mentioned in the actual sentence. So here, literal and free. Of course, there are lots of books by Newmark, for example. He talks about literal and free in 1981 and 1988. He does actually, you also talk about semantic as opposed to communicative translation. And then you got Catford, 1965, formal correspondence as opposed to textual equivalence. And then you got formal equivalence to dynamic equivalence, neither, 1964 and 1969 with Tabor. And then non-pragmatic with pragmatic translation. That's a choice you can go for as a method. Known by Basil Hatem, 91, and Basil Hatem and Mason, 91, 90, and 97, and Mona Baker, 98, and Snell Hornby, 1988. Then you have non-creative with creative translation, and done by Baylard and Ozorov, which is in 1998. And finally, from this group of literal and free, you got non-idiomatic translation as opposed to idiomatic translation by Newmark in 1988. Moving on to the word level equivalence, because that's the first step really for any translator. In other words, for Mona Baker, which she has done in 1992, she said what is meaning, what is a word, because we're saying equivalence at the level of word, the word level. What is a word, according to her, is whether or not it has the main unit of meaning in language, i.e. you have the meaning correctly there. But then, how many types of meanings are there for the word? According to Mona Baker, there are 4 different types of meanings: propositional meaning, expressive meaning, presupposed meaning, and evoked meaning. Let's look at them one by one. Propositional meaning, it means it's a word, okay? It's the meaning of a word which arises from the relation between that word and what it refers to, what it describes in real or imaginary world. So, for example, the word shirt, it's something to wear, the upper body. But of course, it's inaccurate if you say a shirt to refer to a pair of socks. It's not the same. So it's a matter of true or false meaning here. So the rule is here when a translation that way, when you do it this way and you mix shirt with socks, when you translate shirt as socks, then you are giving an inaccurate translation, and this is based on the propositional meaning. And also the next meaning, which is lexical meaning related, is expressive meaning, which cannot be judged as true or false the way propositional meaning is. Here you've got also the attitude and the feelings of the speaker, which is reflected in the choice of words they are using. So, for example, they can use the word complain or whinge. Okay, whinge may be informal, whereas complain is more formal. Okay, they both have the same propositional meaning, but they differ in their expressive meaning, in the attitude or in the feeling. The proposed meaning is actually what is the proposed meaning is you need to be aware of the environment around the word. And that is, for example, the word studious as an adjective is used only for humans. You cannot say to a cupboard or to a window the window is studious. That would be strange, because the window does not study. It's not a hard-working window. But then you can say geometrical. You can describe it as geometrical, because that's an animate object, and it can be described in that. So the adjectives are actually used for certain nouns. So that is a presupposed meaning. In other words, this meaning is only linked to either human or non-human, inanimate. There's also collocations, for example. For example, the word broken, when you say the laws are broken, of course you can't translate it as القوانين يتم كسرها, because that's in English, they say كسرها. But in Arabic, they don't. You say يتم مخالفتها, يتم نقضها, يتم اعتراض عليها, but you cannot say كسرها, كسر القانون. The fourth lexical meaning out of the four that we have come across, we've covered propositional, which is true and false meaning. We've covered also expressive, which is relating to the feelings and attitude of the speaker. And we've covered also presupposed, which means that the meanings of these words that are collocational because they come with certain words that are, for example, an adjective for a human, it cannot be applied for non-human unless you are talking about in literature where they can do both. And then you have the final one, which is called, in the lexical meaning, is called evoked meaning, which arises from dialect and register variation. So evoked meaning is linked to dialect and register rather. So what is dialect? Of course, we know what dialect is. It is a variety of language, of language, which has currency within a specific community or a group of speakers. Dialect can be geographical related, and can be temporal, which means time related, and it can be social related, the dialects. So there are three types of dialects. Of course, if you are using American English as opposed to British English, for the word lift and for the word elevator. The same in Arabic, when you're using some words that are used in Morocco, for example, they are not used in Egypt. Or dialects that are used in Scotland that's not used in England, for example. So these are relating to dialect with regards to the geographical area where they come from. For example, let me just show you an example here. Like in Moroccan, you say hout for any fish, and no matter how small the fish is. Yani we can't translate the word hout as whale. For example, I ate أكلت حوت اليوم في الصباح. You can't say that I ate a whale. You will be eating a fish, small fish. Of course, the word whale, by the way, كلمة حوت في اللغة العربية صحيحة وتشير إلى السمكة صغيرة كانت أو كبيرة. فيعني الاستخدام المغربي للكلمة صحيح. لكن we have to be careful because the dialect in Morocco is referring to a small fish, not to a big fish. The same can be for the word عافي, means نار. تاريخ الازدياد instead of تاريخ الميلاد. Taxi instead of taxi, which is سيارة أجرة, which is a loan word being used. And there is also temporal dialect is relating to a temporal element or base, and that is when you are using words that are related to a certain group of people or a certain age, or to a community, or something that is in history, used to be used but not anymore. For example, the word نعم and bala in Arabic, and say I is an old, or for example in English you say verily, or you can say in fact or indeed, or that's true, or actually. You don't say verily. So that is a different age or different period when the word verily was used, but not the word actually or really used. So you need to choose according to the temporal. The word baba and al-walid, perhaps, but that is really more into another form which I will talk about, which is called register, which I'll come across, I'll talk about in a minute, about the interpersonal relation. Now, the last element under dialect is to do with the social, which means the social base, which means that the words and the structures used by members of different social classes, from different social class, from high class, from working class, and so on. Like the word scent and perfume, napkin and serviette, عبير وعطر وأريج ورائحة وبارفان. Parfum in Arabic is a very French word, but used by those who have high class. They say parfum. But of course that is, in English, the word perfume is a very normal word. The scent is a very high class word. And then also the word imra'a, hurma, and sayyida also is used for a social, because of a social element relating to it. Of course, the word sayyida is married and anisa is not married. Then you have register, which is very important in the evoked meaning, when you are choosing the meaning for a word, the lexical meaning of a word. And register is a variety of language that a language user considers appropriate to a specific situation. It's appropriate to a specific situation. Like, for example, the word, for example, depression in meteorology is completely different to depression in psychology. Psychology, depression means إحباط أو اكتئاب, whereas in meteorology it means انخفاض ضغط الجو. And highlights, for example, in highlights, which is relating to the human, to the hair, you say she has her highlights done by a hairdresser. And highlights can be a highlight of a